The single biggest act of faith you're ever going to make in life doesn't happen when you feel God is calling you to do something. That's not it at all. Instead, it happens when God tells you to be patient, to wait, to give Him time, and to trust Him.
It's time now for Off the Wall with award-winning journalist and Christian author Doug Wahl. Listen to what your life reveals about the Bible through essays and commentaries on the world we live in, the people we are, and the God we serve. Now from Wilmington, North Carolina, here's Doug Wahl.
The pool, our neighborhood pool, is now open. A lot of my material and essays come from the pool, mostly from conversations with neighbors about their lives. But this particular essay right here, it comes from the pool, but it was from a night when no one else was around. You see, the other night, I went out to swim some laps. Swimming is one of my big hobbies. But that night, I noticed a small frog had jumped out of the bushes, hopped across the concrete, and then did a backflip into the water. And so I scooped it up and got it out. I really had to get it out of the pool because the chlorine would eventually killed it. And so then I went on and finished my lap. I touched the wall, as swimmers do, and headed towards the deep end, where I touched the wall again and flipped around, and I noticed the frog, the same frog I had just saved, had jumped back into the pool. So, being the good guy, the humanitarian I am, I scooped it up again and brought it to safety. And this went on, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times. I'd touch the wall, flip around, there'd be the frog. Eventually, I just gave up and let the frog swim along with me. Here's the point to this little story, and I know some of you already know this, but you cannot save something that doesn't want to be saved. And you cannot save something that doesn't know it needs to be saved. Obviously, I'm not talking about frogs here. Truth is, I have someone in my life right now, and maybe you do too. I have somebody in my life who keeps jumping into the danger zone. We try to get their attention, we scream at them, and we tell them that they're going the wrong way, that they're on the wrong path. We may even try to scoop them up and get them to safety, to a higher ground. And for some of you, I've no doubt that you've said the same words that I spoke to the frog that night. I have no doubt that you told them, these chemicals are going to kill you, get out of here. And then we flip around, and we've discovered that they've jumped back in. Here's one of the hardest lessons of life. Our ability to help someone out only goes as far as a person's desire to receive that help. Do you get that? Does that make any sense at all? I know it's a gray area, but if you go beyond that point, if you start rescuing people who don't know they need to be rescued, then you move from being helpful to being an enabler. I don't know where that line is, and to be sure, on some occasions, even though my heart was in the right place, I know I've crossed that line and probably did more bad than good. This was something, if you think about it in a weird way, that even Jesus had to deal with. Remember the story in the gospel when he's getting nowhere in his hometown, so he just leaves. He kicks the dust off his shoes, heads out of town, and mutters something about how a prophet is honored everywhere except among his family and friends. What Jesus was really saying there is, I'm too close to this situation to do any good. And if you think about it, some of our own efforts have failed, simply put, because we're too close to the situation. There are some obvious places where we can show restraint. If you take on a person's job search, if you take on a person's recovery, if you take on their love life as if it's your own, well, then it's not just enough to get them a job. You've got to make sure they keep that job. And it's not just enough to get them clean. You got to make sure they stay clean. And it's not just enough to set them up on a date. Man, you better go on that date with them and make sure they don't say anything stupid or do anything stupid. And since none of that is possible, since it's impossible for us to be there all the time, the leap of faith that God calls us to make is to let go, to give it to Him, and to do nothing really about the situation. And maybe at the most to pray that somebody else, somebody who's not so close, can come in and make a difference where we couldn't. My prayer is that God will give that person in your life, whoever they may be, the desire to change and to get better, because honestly, nothing is going to change for them or improve in their situation until they have that desire. So that's my first prayer. And secondly, I'm going to pray that God will give you the peace to let go. I'm Doug Wahl in Wilmington, North Carolina. God bless.
You've been listening to Off the Wall on Desert Radio AZ.